Linda Seals.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to talk about the University of Florida IFAS Extension. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Extension. How many of you know what Extension is? Okay, so it's not unanimous. All right. So what Extension does is we are literally an extension of the University of Florida right here in the county, funded in part by Brevard County. And what we do is we develop, we implement, and we evaluate educational programs that have impact on our community and result in behavior change and practice change. Those are our ultimate goals. A lot of people, when they hear extension, they immediately think of agriculture, and that certainly is a traditional part of extension. However, there is a lot more to us than that. And here in Brevard County, we are fortunate in that we have 3 faculty on staff, myself included, who are horticulturists, and we are experts in areas of fertilizers and that whole chemistry and soil science, and it's a very complex science when it comes to fertilizer. I don't even get it all. I would need a chemistry degree to really get it all, but I have a pretty good understanding of how that all works. Many of you have probably heard of Florida Friendly Landscaping. I heard it mentioned here a couple of times. That is a trademark University of Florida IFAS program. Florida Friendly Landscaping started out as a way to teach residents in Florida about proper landscaping practices that result in reduced fertilization, increased native plants, not entirely native plants, but an increase in native plants, and some reduction in turf. We don't eliminate turf because we all know that turf will never get eliminated, so we don't advocate for that, obviously. But we do like to see some turf areas reduced where turf does not thrive. Also, Florida Friendly Landscaping principles advocate for fewer pesticides, and that's a good thing for us in the Indian River Lagoon as well. We work on living shorelines. That's part of the principles, teaching people that a bare grass shoreline around stormwater retention ponds is not a good thing. It's not good for the Indian River Lagoon. It is not good for our community. And that is a tough one to sell, let me tell you, especially working with some of the HOAs. So Florida Friendly, and that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to FFL. What we do here in Brevard County as far as education goes with FFL is we created a program several years ago called My Brevard Yard. My Brevard Yard had a lot of momentum early on, and it still has momentum, so much so that it is being expanded into the entire 5-county Indian River Lagoon region, of course under different names. St. Lucie doesn't like the idea of it being called My Brevard Yard, obviously, right? So My Brevard Yard's a little bit different from some of the other things that we've done in that, you know, we know that behavior change is really difficult. We can't bring people into a classroom and put up a PowerPoint presentation and show them that you should not be using weed and feed fertilizer, because they're going to sit there and look at me like you guys are right now. Because we don't recommend weed and feed fertilizers unless there's a uniform distribution of weeds throughout the turf, and that is usually not the case. So, you know, when we tell people that in a classroom situation, then they go to their nearest box store and they stand there in the aisle, and I've been there on Saturday mornings and I've seen the looks on their faces, and I usually say, "Can I help you?" And they say, "Do you work here?" I say, "No, but I can help you." And I do steer them away from those products that they shouldn't be applying to their yard. Not just because it's not good for the lagoon, but also because horticulturally and scientifically it doesn't make any sense. So is the case with weed and feed. That makes absolutely no sense, and that is bad for the lagoon and bad for our environment. So we recognized that we weren't really getting anywhere with behavior change. And so we decided that, you know what, we're gonna start holding people's hands, almost literally. So we created this program where we actually come to your yard for a fee. We have to charge for this. You know, we're in that day and time, right? But we actually come to your yard. So we'll come to John's yard. Or maybe not you, John. We'll come to Virginia's yard. Yeah, you know, you're almost an expert. We'll go to Virginia's yard, and we will find out how many square feet she actually has of her turf. Because most people think they have 5,000 square feet of turf, and really they may have 1,000. Okay? Most people don't they don't get square feet. So we will actually measure her yard if she hasn't already done so. We'll figure out exactly how many square feet she has. We will calibrate her irrigation system. Irrigation doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to Indian River Lagoon and water quality, but that is a major component of what's going on, of the problem anyway. So we will calibrate her irrigation system. We will look at her time clock, because most people do not know how to set an irrigation clock. I have a master's degree in horticulture, and I didn't know how to set an irrigation clock. It took me a while to figure that out. They're not that easy. We will collect a soil sample, and we will send it to Gainesville at the UF Soils Lab. That's part of the fee. That's included in the fee. When those soil test results come back, then we will call them up, or they'll call us before we get to call them, because they'll get a copy also, and they can't read it because it's written in some sort of scientific ease that no one can read. And we will explain to them what it says. And most of the time, it will give a recommendation for which analysis of fertilizer they should use. So in other words, if you put out a list of fertilizers that maybe one of the box stores has, that doesn't mean that one of those fertilizers is the one that you should be using. Okay? It may be a 2406. Well, maybe you don't need a 2406. Maybe your soil test says you only need a 1206, okay? And 12 being the nitrogen. And what is a major pollutant in the Indian River Lagoon? Nitrogen, right? So those are the kinds of things that we teach in the My Brevard Yard program. And then we come back. And this is what we do in Extension. We come back 6 months later, or we come back a year later, and we ask you, how much fertilizer are you using? Are you still going to, I'm going to pick on Lowe's. Are you still going to Lowe's and buying 3 50-pound bags of fertilizer and putting those out on your 1,000 square foot yard that you thought was 5,000 square foot? And if they tell us no, we're now doing it the way you told us to do it, score, we win, right? And that's our goal. That's our objective with the My Brevard Yard program, is to have behavior change when it comes to fertilizer application. We also do GI Bmp certification, which is the Green Industry's Best Management Practices certification that all commercial landscapers have to take in order to get licensed to apply fertilizer. Now, maybe you didn't know this, but they have to have a license to apply fertilizer. In order to get that license, they have to come to us and take that Green Industry's Best Management Practices class, which teaches them the science of fertilizer. So they learn some of the chemistry and all that good stuff. We also have the Master Gardener program. A lot of people think the Master Gardener program is just teaching a bunch of retired people about orchids. It's not. Orchids are great. Nothing against orchids, okay? I love orchids. But we also teach them about proper fertilizer application. We teach them all the Florida-friendly landscaping principles, and we pound that into their heads. Because what we want them to do is we want them to go out into the community and share that information. So that we think of them as miniature faculty, all right, little me's going out there teaching people. And we have a couple of hundred active Master Gardeners. A new program that was recently started is the Space Coast Golf and Turf Association. That's a organization of local golf course and athletic turf managers who are working together to learn more about fertilizer application, irrigation, pest management, all those things that go along with managing turf on golf courses and athletic fields. And that's a big part of our county, and that's a really important factor to consider. I've recently started working with HOAs on their stormwater retention ponds. Another big issue, that's been a big gap. That's been a big gap in our programming here in Brevard County, and I'm working with an HOA right now who has a 35-acre lake, that's just riddled with algae and all kinds of problems. So I'm working with them and trying to get them to do some bee mats and aeration and maybe even some dredging. They may have to do some dredging. 4-H. Someone mentioned STEM and STEAM and all those good things. 4-H, we're working on some environmental programs for our 4-H youth. 4-H is different from the schools in that these are usually after-school clubs, and these after-school clubs work with kids in developing leadership skills, life skills, public speaking, citizen science type things. So these are things that they may not get in school, but also there's a STEAM and STEM component to that. And so I'm pretty excited about some of the things we're doing in that area. We're also developing a teaching garden at our campus on Lake Drive. One of the things, as I mentioned before, it's really difficult for us to sit people in a classroom and get behavior change. We really need to get them out there, out in the field. We need to get them to see the trees. We need to get them to actually physically apply fertilizer so they can see and feel what that's like. Once you get people to do that, then you get more buy-in, you get more commitment, and you eventually get behavior change. How am I doing on time?
I think you've got
30 seconds. So we also do agriculture BMPs. I could go on forever. We also do agriculture BMPs, so we do work with our agriculture industry here in Brevard County. We work with our hobby farms, where we work with them on fertilizer application, obviously. And, you know, and a lot of times the work that we do very often is disguised, because if I call you up and say, hey, I'm doing a class on fertilizer, you're going to say, okay. So, but if I say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to grow the best tomatoes in all of Brevard County, then you're going to come. So, thank you.
Great. Now, questions for clarification? Okay, Terry.
Will you be at my lawn? You have a serious question.
What are you doing after this?
Yeah, my time is yours. So what's the possibility of doing some sort of volunteer citizen outreach thing to basically leverage what you guys do? Could you, for instance, teach this committee to do the, you know, visit, you know, proselytize in the local neighborhood, provide some, you know, real guidance, and you know, conduct the you know, broker the soil sampling and do all that? Is that feasible, or is that?
That is absolutely feasible. That's what we do with the Master Gardeners. You know, we're working on teaching them how to do the My Brevard Yard site visits. And yeah, I mean, you know, I'm all about proselytizing good science, and that's what we do. We proselytize science, research-based information, especially as it relates to fertilizer. So I think, you know, we're really interested in expanding our volunteer network and expanding what we know into the community. Because, you know, there are only 3 of us, you know, in the office that take care of 72 miles of lagoon. There's no way, right? There's no way the 3 of us can impact the entire county. So we do rely on groups like yourselves and our partners and volunteers to help us with that, because there's no way we can do it alone.
Thank you.
Okay, John.
Since fortunately we're being televised today, okay?
Yeah.
Take a minute, if somebody's out there and wants to know more about My Brevard Yard, and I'm going to tell you, this is the first I've heard this is great, you can come out to my yard after you do his. How do people find out that are watching right now about My Brevard Yard? Can they go online? What can they do?
They can go online. They can call us at 321-633-1702. They can email me at L, as in Linda, Seals, S-E-A-L-S, like the animal plural, at UFL, as in University of Florida, .edu. And we can get them there. They can also go to brevard.ifas.ufl.edu. I always hesitate to say that one because it's long.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and I can also endorse the program. I've been through it, and it's great.
Thank you.
And we were handed over to the Lagoon Friendly Lawn, so now we're
Yeah.
certified, so now we're at the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're teaching a class in June, or I'm teaching a class in June, teaching you how to actually convert some of your yard to an FFL, Florida Friendly Landscape. So we're actually going to let you do the design, and we're going to be there to teach you how to do that. So, yeah, more of that
And it's
hands-on
amazing
stuff.
what you do with 3 staff. And I know one of the positions you're advertising, Virginia, will be working with Linda.
Yeah.
So be able to offer those services or promote those services to people that are going through the
Right, so
septic to
that's
sewer.
the septic drain field upgrade program. We would have one staff sitting in Linda's office managing that program. And so while they are coordinating with several thousand people who have the worst septic systems in Brevard but aren't close enough to sewer to hook up, they will have access to all the coworkers in Linda's office about everything else that could happen in their yard, especially while the turf is all torn up. Rather than putting sod back, maybe there's something better that could happen.
Yeah, that's exactly why I jumped on that opportunity, because, you know, septic tank is not in my wheelhouse, let me tell you. So, but I saw that as an opportunity to start working with those individuals who's kind of a captured audience, and so that's a great opportunity.
Great.